President Zelenskyy, thank you so much for making time for the Christian Broadcasting Network. I want to begin with marking today. It's the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Budapest Memorandum. Ukraine's foreign minister this week said that it was short-sighted, that it failed to prevent Russian aggression, and that Ukraine should not make a similar mistake this time as you're looking towards assurances with NATO. What are you thinking about in terms of security guarantees, and what are the must-haves in any framework?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for your arrival. I know that you had a few very important meetings. It's important for us that the world will be speaking about things that are happening in Ukraine. We do not want people to forget about Ukraine, because we are fighting here for the right of life, not just for our people when we fight for democracy, but we also fight for the future for the whole civilized world. And well, first we are talking about European continent and United States of America, because you are our partners. It's important to us. Second thing, as for this Budapest Memorandum, you know what I think? We can't make jokes with lives of people. That is our biggest asset. We cannot make jokes with those papers and take them for granted. And we cannot approach without any seriousness and then just simply pretend that nothing to worry about and that can be ignored. And when you do not keep your word, you can't do jokes like that, because we're talking about guarantees, security guarantees for people, for their lives. Like we have seen in the very beginning of that war, the normality of life is being interrupted. This normalness of life of their people, their homes, their life, their faith. We are witnessing today how Budapest Memorandum did not work. And yes, our society are very much offended with that. We gave up our weaponry because the world demanded. And they were guarantors of security. Yes, Russia signed that, but European countries signed that. United States and China, you know, they were also represented there. They were countries, serious countries, that were and are serious countries. And they provided their guarantees of territorial integrity and sovereignty. You know, territorial integrity and sovereignty are being violated. So that we are not joking here, and I think that Russia violated Budapest Memorandum and other international agreements too of international right, and I think those leaders turned to be weak leaders, especially those who guaranteed security, guaranteed Budapest that offense. Not that Russia is murdering people. They are participants, they are murdering, and they're not even hiding that. But we are also offended by those serious countries that share the same values that we share in Ukraine, and those countries were not able to stop Putin. They did not want to take him seriously. They did not want to take steps to take him seriously and be more harsh, can I use that word? They did not put that murderer in place. They did not condemn him. They did not prosecute him. Words are not enough to prosecute a murderer. He takes away life that he never gave to our people. But he takes away a lot of lives, thousands of lives. So how can I treat that document that does not work? Document that does not work is not a document.
Mr. President, I know that you're looking for some assurances from NATO. I think one of the terms that's used is the NATO umbrella. Your critics would say that that's not going to happen. So what do you mean when you say security assurances under a NATO umbrella?
We have to be realists. And we are, in this war, we are more than just realists. We understand who is our neighbor and how that neighbor violated all the international laws, and accept NATO There is no this global umbrella for the global security. Yeah, there are more than 20 papers of international nature that I sign, and they do talk about kind of security, all kinds of security, finances, weapons, anti-missile protection, humanitarian, medical, and all of those are security assurances. But when we are talking about a model that would disable people coming to your land with weaponaries and border protection, then we are talking the only available model, working model, at least among the NATO countries, because they are not in war. Praise God that they do not have that war, because it is suffering. That's the worst thing that can ever happen to you. But we are amidst that. We are unfortunately amidst in this war. So we do believe those guarantees, NATO umbrella, as I said, invitation is the step one. It's not NATO yet, but it's goodwill, and what is more important, it's honest, fair relationships. It's fair response, fair reply. Will Ukraine in future be in NATO? And it is important to accomplish that step one, because that would send a very clear signal to Putin or any other aggressor, you name it, that Ukraine is going to be a NATO member. Yeah, we understand that United States and other partners cannot take Ukraine into NATO while we are having war. Ukraine understands that, and we do not want to involve military personnel of other countries into this war. Some say Ukraine wants to involve NATO into the war. That is not true. That's why we are looking for that invitation. And we understand that while we are having war, we are not being admitted as NATO membership. But if we want to end that war, we need to give that invitation to the whole territory of Ukraine in the internationally recognized borders. That is not for discussion, because our constitution, international right, you cannot violate it. So within internationally recognized borders, that invitation should be provided. But actions of the alliance, or what is applicable, that we can negotiate, that should be applicable to the territory that Ukraine is controlling, will be controlling, and with future understanding of expanding that to the whole territory.
I want to ask you're talking a lot about peace. And of course, President Trump has made the pledge that he could end the war within 24 hours after his inauguration. One of the things that I've been struck by as we've been here in Ukraine, talking to members of parliament, talking to religious leaders, and even, ordinary people, is how frequently people are discussing peace. Has that changed because of the dynamics of President Trump being elected?
First of all, people in Ukraine wanted peace always, even those who never hold any weapons. And majority of our citizens are just like that. When full-scale invasion started, people had no other way as to take weapons, because their children were killed. Everyone would do that. All our people were doing that, and I'm quite sure, I do not want your countries and our neighbors in the United States, I do not want you to have war, but if that happens, you would do the same. You just have to protect yourself. And people, can I tell that they wanted less peace? No, Ukrainians were always for peace. Ukraine is a very peaceful country, a very peaceful nation, and very believing nation. By the way, very believing nation. You know that even the majority of evangelicals are here in Ukraine. Our Council of Churches is the biggest one. People of different faiths, different religions, but they are very much believing nation. And for them, there is this hope that Trump has this position as a strong president. That is what is coming across. And I think that Putin understands strength only. So then he would see that there is this strong president, strong country standing with Ukraine, and then we can achieve peace through strength. That's a hope that people have for new administration and new president, and people believe him and what he says. Undoubtedly, when he talks about 24 hours, we understand that it's not that literally he would be able to resolve that, but the way I interpret his words, he wants to do that quickly. And I think that is important. I think it should happen as quick as possible. That's for sure, because every day we lose people. And very important that it should end in the way that would disable this to start all over again. That is very important.
You just mentioned the United States. I wanted to ask you, how will negotiating for peace with Trump back in the White House be different than the current relationship?
I think we will be able to understand one another. We did have phone calls, we did have a meeting, and our teams are working together and working more. Undoubtedly, after inauguration, we can look into some details, because only then it would be, we would have some grounds to talk officially, and we will be looking for all the opportunities to end that war as soon as possible and as just as possible. And I think that with this new president of the United States, we are siding together. He does want to end this war, and we Ukrainians really want to end that war as well. And he understands that America cannot lose. America cannot come across as weak. So then it would not end with Ukraine. If Ukraine turns to be weak, if position of United States will not be strong, then all of those wars will explode in all the corners of the world. And we are not talking about Europe, where there are high risks. We are talking about Balkans, for example, in Europe, or Baltic countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union in their time, just like we talk about a Pacific region. We understand that those are going to be examples. If evil is not placed to where it belongs, then it will be examples to other authoritarian regimes that are watching some other directions. And we are pretty much confident Russia by herself will not calm down. Do you see what is going on in Georgia today? Why people talk very little about that? And what America is doing when it comes to Georgia, those are weak actions, very similar. Well, they did have occupied parts in Georgia. Nothing happened. Just dead parts of Georgia. Nothing is alive there. They do not have civilization. Russia were doing that purposefully, as they were trying to freeze this conflict so that Georgia would not be involved in NATO, in European Union. That's what they do in Moldova, that's what they do in every other part of the world. You know, they have the same template, same map that they are using over and over again. And today in Georgia, that yesterday was a free democratic country, now oligarchs took all the authority belongs to business that have connections to Moscow, affiliation with Moscow energy, same here. Even Georgia officially, they say that the government of Georgia say, you know what, European Union and the Western dimension, let's postpone a couple of years. Totally, they are being manipulated by Russia and their leadership. I think that United States and Europe were not strong enough. They did not place Russia to a place that they belong to. And all of those young boys and girls, all of those students that are going outside to protest, police is trying to push those protests down. They have nothing in their hands to do. All they have in hands, they do have that desire to live in peaceful European country, and they're being forced to be facing Russian Federation. That is what's going on. What strong steps did the United States do? What strong steps did European countries take? I don't see any. I'm being sincere with you. Same in Moldova. And it will happen. There are high risks.
You had just mentioned territorial sovereignty. Some Ukrainians are opposed to giving up land. Maybe to them it adds insult to injury because of the huge sacrifice and the huge loss of Ukrainian blood that's been spilled. How much does that factor into the decisions and the negotiations?
We can't legally recognize our occupied territories. We cannot legally admit them as Russian territories. We can't, by the constitution of Ukraine, by the law of Ukraine. And just internally, that would split Ukraine. That would split Ukrainian society. Our biggest weapon was unity among Ukrainians. And I think that this is still our strongest weapon, our people, our nation, and their unity. And that's why we should not be playing around with things that can crack the society. If we were to have a lot of weaponry and artillery, of course we could advance much quicker as we were asking for. If we have less than what we were asking for, then of course some of the questions would have to be resolved diplomatically. But legally recognize them as Russian territories, we're not going to do that. There are a lot of people there who live there. They lost their homes. Some gave their lives. Some were protecting their land. A lot of people are still in captivity. By the way, dozens of thousands of children were deported. Thousands, both civil and military people, are in captivity. Russians ruined a lot. How can we recognize all that land, all that we had, to be Russian lands? Are we forgiving them or what? If legally you recognize temporarily occupied territories as Russian territories, it would mean that we forgave them. It would mean that the whole world got pacified and enabled them to start all over again. But that would also enable all the other regimes to do the same. So legally it's impossible, but diplomatically we have to come up to achievement of our goals. And what is our goal? This lasting peace and accomplishing that as soon as possible for Ukraine.
I know tomorrow is the day of the Ukrainian army. Is there anything that you want to communicate not only to the men and women who serve in uniform in Ukraine, but how you might want to acknowledge that to the world, your appreciation and the Ukrainian people's appreciation for what they've sacrificed and what they've done?
Yes, tomorrow is the Armed Forces Day here in Ukraine, and they are our forces. That's why we even call them Armed Forces of Ukraine. And this force was there during the very initial days of the full-scale invasion, and people were counting on our army. But I want to appreciate relatives, parents, children of our military people. It's very important that they would be alive, healthy, because that warrior, he is not protecting an abstract idea. He or she is protecting his own people, because that is his family, that is his country. And I think that this is the biggest motivation to protect lives of your people, of those whom you consider dear to you. So I want to appreciate that they brought up, parents, you brought up those good children, and children, I want to appreciate them, that they support their fathers, mothers, they're supporting, that children's picture drawing you know, like thank you, Ukrainian army. That would be the most dear gift that a warrior can get. I wish them health, life, and then they would be able to think how to protect Ukraine, and also self-protection, because if a warrior is gone, what happens? But if there are problems in the family, well, God forbid, domestic problems, then that warrior is not focused on his business. And warrior has to now think in how to address all of those domestic issues. So I want to appreciate the families of our army.
You just mentioned children. Some estimates, the official count, I believe, is about 20,000 Ukrainian children who've been forcibly moved from Ukraine to Russia. Some numbers say as many as hundreds of thousands. What is the priority in getting them back? Where do they factor into the equation of peace talks?
The most difficult part today, children, that's very difficult to come back. How do we bring military people? Even that is difficult. We are doing that much slower than we would hope, although more than 500 of military people were returned. You know, we do exchange military to military, and that is understandable process. Yes, sometimes this process Russians are blocking, but that's how we do that. Sometimes we can bring back civilians, and we have some tools to do that, how we bring back civilians. And you know that even priests were brought from captivity. Now, when it comes to children, that's very difficult. Why? Because we cannot exchange children for children. Yes, they have deported children, deported by strength. We are not capturing Russian children. We are not stealing children. We are not deporting their children. That never ever happened. And even our Kirk's operation, that's a proof. So you cannot say, yeah, just because Ukrainians are not there, Ukrainians never did that. No. When we were in Kursk, we did not capture, civilians. We did not kill civilians. Not a single child suffered. That's the difference. Russia chose that. They wanted to do that. Now, when we talk about what they chose, we are able to verify 19,000. 19,000, those are verified events of children abduction, when we know the exact name and family name, when we were able to identify a child. But pay attention to this. Officially, I think in 2023, their Russian ombudsman informed that they are holding 700,000 of Ukrainian children. They are coming up with that statistics. I don't know if I can trust that statistics, but it's terrible. And they are being boastful with this thing that they were stealing children. That is something that we faced that shows you the reality of Russia, and that is show who they are, first of all. So only because of partners, only because of pressure, we can bring back children, political pressure. And we have to talk about that more and more. Yes, we do believe that together with Europe, together with President Trump, we can end this war, and we do want to bring all of our military people, civilian people, and more than anything, children, because it's very important to us. Now we do that through Qatar. We do that with the help of Vatican, and undoubtedly, there are examples of other countries that were able to help with a small number of children. We were able to bring 1,030 children out of that 19,000 of verified abducted children. Those are tragic numbers.
You had just mentioned priests and other religious leaders who've been persecuted. We have documented and reported on cases where church pastors have been taken out of their churches and targeted and abused, in some cases killed. Ukraine is known for its religious freedom. It's clearly a threat to Russia, but I want to ask you specifically, a lot of the support that you've received, for example, funding for Ukrainian aid, came through the help of evangelical Christians. We also have seen evangelical churches in Poland help to receive a lot of Ukrainians who are fleeing to provide them with food and with clothing and other needs. How crucial has the support of evangelical Christians been to what Ukraine has been going through?
As I've told you, we have the majority of evangelicals in Europe, and their support is very important, and I want to thank them. And I want to thank all the churches, all the evangelical Christians. As I have said, we have representatives of different religions and faiths and confessions, and from the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, they were helping a lot. And you know, Russia treats Ukrainian church, all kind of church. Russia treats them as to Ukrainian school. Anywhere where Russia would come and occupy, they would ruin churches and schools so that it would not be even traceable. That's why a lot of priests, different priests, they were captured or even were murdered. By the way, I think they murdered 50 priests, and they murdered them differently, and we have all the proofs how they were tortured and why they were tortured, because they had to serve Kirill, the Patriarch of Moscow, and they were forced to serve their church. But priest serves people, priest serves God, and priest helps people, but those priests, they would not want to do that, and they were killed for that. They just wanted to break those people, and they wanted to break their spirit, and they killed 50 priests. And what profit do they gain when they ruined over 700 church buildings? Missiles, rockets, ruining. They would burn those churches. What gain did they have? It just underlines one more time that this Russian direction, one language, one church, that's their understanding.
I have one final question for you. Thank you for your time. I know you have a Jewish background, and I wanted to ask if you're comfortable. I don't want to make this about you, but you're leading a country. And I wonder, maybe a lot of people also wonder, how has this war and your leadership of the war and overseeing the effort, how has it impacted your faith? Has it tested your faith? Has your faith grown? I think just people would be curious if you're willing to answer.
Yes. I think all of us, with this war, we became more believing, because as people, people fight and pray. What else can I tell you? That's how it goes. And that is important, very important. Because people need to be helped. Whatever help. And as I said, Ukraine is a religious country, is a very believing country. And I hope, yes, we have to trust our own efforts, but also we believe that God will help Ukraine. And Ukrainians believe that.